Thank you so much for joining me today in the Louie file. Today I wanted to share something that's might be a little bit deep for some, but as you get older, in the natural even, not even talking about the spiritual, in the natural you see the world differently as you grow mature in a just a normal, human natural sense. You understand a bigger picture. So why wouldn't that be true when it comes to our spiritual understanding? Well, it would, wouldn't it? I want to start today by looking at a few verses in Job, and I just pray that you could follow me here. In Job chapter 1, we see Satan, Job 1 verse 8, verse 7 and 8, I guess you could say. Satan shows up very early on in the story of Job. And if you know the story, you understand that God's the one that actually points Job out to Satan. He says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan goes, he only serves you because you protect him. If you take away the protection, he'll curse you. And God goes, "Really?" So he gives him some stipulations. You can do what you want with him, but don't kill him. Don't touch him. Don't kill him. So his barns are burned down by marauders. His children are killed. His livestock is killed. It's just one horrific set of bad news after another coming to Job real quickly in the story. And his own wife even is operated by this enemy. If you look in Job 2, verse 9 and 10, after these calamities befall Job, it says, Job 2, 9 and 10, "Then his wife said to him, 'Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die.' But he said to her, 'You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God?'" Now, the New American Standard says, "and not accept adversity." The old King James, which a lot of people want to hang on to, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, says, "Shall we receive good from God and not evil?" And it says, on all this, Job didn't sin with his lips. So Job is saying, shall we not receive evil as coming from God also? What an amazing thing to say. We tend to think, well, that's the devil, that's the enemy, that's bad luck, that's negativity. And then this over here, well, that's God, that's good, that's blessing. And we divide them out very clearly between the two. But let me just share this with you. We have no indication throughout the letter or the book of Job that Job even knows anything at all about Satan. If you look in the first chapter of Job, Satan is mentioned, but that's like a peek that God gives us behind the curtain in heaven, the heavenly meeting that is taking place. But we have no real indication that Job knows or thinks anything about this Satan character at all. Throughout the rest of the book, Job's friends come along and it's always talk about God and why God would be doing this, why this would be happening to Job, but there's no reference to Satan. They're not saying, well, it's the devil, it's the enemy. I find that very intriguing because in our day and age, we try to point at the devil all the time. Anything that's what we deem bad or evil or negative, we say that's the devil. And anything we see that we think is a blessing or good or whatever, we say that's God. Now think about this for a minute. Way back in the Garden of Eden, we have this tree that God told us not to eat of. God told Adam not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Isn't that something? So could it be that our divided thinking, our double-mindedness, our blurred vision, double vision, if you will, is really just a product of the fall to begin with, and it's really just coming from a divided mindset, a fallen, wrong tree mindset. All right, if that's not enough for you, jump ahead with me a little bit to Isaiah 45. And in Isaiah 45, verse 7, the Lord is declaring that He's the one that forms the light and creates darkness. And He's the one that forms light and creates darkness, and He's the one that makes peace and, oh my, creates evil. Oh, hold the presses. Put on the brakes, Louie. What are you saying here? That God creates evil? How could you say that? Well, it is a bit of a mystery, isn't it? But as we saw in Job, Job said to his wife, shall we not accept good from God and not evil too? So Job is seeing through, whether he knew there was an enemy or not, he understood God was God and there's none beside him, and he is in charge. He is the ultimate and only power in the universe. Now, in Isaiah, he's saying he creates good and evil. Well, I think maybe we could be better served by seeing this, that God creates freedom, which will result in evil just because there's freedom. We all, fallen, will choose evil at first. We are slaves to sin. We can only produce and behave as our Father, who is the fallen one himself. An amazing thing to think about, isn't it? So, how does this all play out? Well, if you jump ahead in Matthew 26, you'll see Jesus, a little bit of a take on it from Jesus' perspective. In Matthew 26, 36 through 46, I'm not going to read all these, you can read them. This is Jesus' experience in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's praying because he knows the cross is coming. I just want to read one verse to you here, Matthew 26, verse 39. It says, and he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Now, that may not seem like much at first, but let me just say this. The cross was a cruel, judgment, murderous device. I think there is something to be said about this, that you could call it the devil's cross, but Jesus was choosing to see it as his Father's cup. See, the cup, that's an implication that he's going to swallow it. Paul tells us that death is going to be swallowed up in victory. See, Jesus is going to swallow this cup. He's going to take this cross, this horrific death, this what for all practical purposes is evil, as coming from his Father. Wow. Man, that's astounding, isn't it? You know, earlier on in Matthew, I think it's chapter 5, he tells us that we have to have a single eye. He says the eye is the lamp of the body, and if the eye is single, then the whole body's full of light. But if it's evil, he calls his double eye or double vision evil. I think what he's getting at there, and he goes on to say you can't serve two masters, he's saying that you can't see two ultimate power sources in the universe. Satan is not the opposite of God. Darkness and light are not opposites. Darkness is an absence of light. Evil in itself is not really something in and of itself, but it is yet a perversion of good. C.S. Lewis had this, and he defined this very well. He said, we're not into dualism. We're not seeing Satan and God as co-equals. We're not seeing them as equals. God is God, and the devil is still God's devil. He is still, even in his deception and rebellion, serving God's purposes. It's astounding, but that's what makes him God. So, what are we to make of this? I'm going to show you a few more verses here and hopefully finish up. I would hope that you would look these up and read into them and meditate on them yourself. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 is where else I wanted to show you. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 through 10. The Apostle Paul says, for we do not want you to be unaware, brethren, of our affliction. He's saying, we had affliction. We didn't have all rosy stuff. We haven't had the greatest accommodations. He says, I don't want you to be unaware, brethren, of our affliction, which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened excessively beyond our strength, so that we despaired even of life. 2 Corinthians 1:9 is a powerful verse. He says, indeed, we had the sentence of death within ourselves. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's so awful. But see, then Paul sees through it, and he says, so that we would not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a parable of death, and will deliver us, he on whom we have set our hope, and he will yet deliver us. See, the Apostle Paul was seeing through. He had a single eye. He saw all of what came to him as coming from the Father. Just like Jesus saw the devil's cross as being the Father's cup, the Apostle Paul came to realize that this adversity, this affliction was coming to him from God, and it had a purpose. It was so that he wouldn't trust in himself, but in God who raises the dead. Isn't that what God is after? The fall of man came about because we bit into the lie that Satan offered, that we could be like God, that we could be our own God, that we could choose what's good and what's evil, and we could determine this for ourselves. Oh my gosh. So the solution is enough affliction and trouble in our life in order to direct us back to the one true God, that we would learn to trust in Him. You know, the world screams at us, think positive. You need to rid your life of the evil. You need to rid your life, not evil, they don't even use that word. Rid your life of the negativity. Get rid of all the negative people in your life. That's the only way you're going to make it. You know, let me tell you a story. There was this young man in his 20s that I met in jail during a jail Bible study, and he was in there for 2 murders. He had killed 2 people, and he's looking at a lot of time. I'm not sure what his sentence was, but it's going to be a while before he gets out. But I listened to him for 1 hour one night, me and him one-on-one, and he told me, he said, Louie, he said, there's a lot of ministers that come into this jail, and they have Bibles. He said, when they come in here, these inmates, these men from our side, look at these men and think, well, they got that book. They understand that book. They've learned that book. And in that book is the answer. If I could just find out what that book says, I can apply it to my life and I can do it. He said, but that's not true at all. And these same ministers say, when you get out of here, get out of jail, you need to find a new set of friends. You need to get out of the environment that you were in. He said, Louie, that's not possible. Most of these guys don't have any money. They can't just get out of jail and move somewhere. He said the message they need to hear, and I thought this was so awesome. He said the message they need to hear, Louie, is that the Holy Spirit, Christ in them, will operate in them in such a way that they can go out and live in the same neighborhood, they can stand on the same street corners, and they can be around the same people and yet not give in to those same temptations, because Christ in you is our hope of glory, and He is the power within, but we have to learn how to trust Him and not ourselves. We can't look to our flesh, we can't look to our intellect, we can't be led around by our feelings and expect to overcome. We have to see it all as coming from the hand of the Father. That's how we have to do it, no matter what it is. We can't rid ourselves of negativity in this life. This existence is full of good and evil, but we have to see it as coming from God, who is good and loving. That's the only way. We have to see through it, not see at it. And it's not up to us to always point out, well, that's the devil, that's God, that's the devil. That goes nowhere. We just got to say, Lord, what are you doing here? What are you meaning in this situation? That's the only way that we can really come through in peace and by faith. I hope this helps you today. Get the single eye and see through your problems today instead of at them. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you'll watch some other Louie Files. I hope they're helpful to you, and share them with your friends. See you later.